through this. This is Event Planning Essentials. Um, as you have questions, please pop them in the chat. I will definitely leave some time for us at the end to be able to answer questions I didn't get to or whatever. But yeah, so let's see. Yep, let me click on the right screen to get it together. There we go. So here's what we're going to cover tonight. Here, a little bit of background about me and why events in youth ministry. And then we're going to kind of break down event planning into what we do before, during, and after the event. So pre, post, and running the event itself. This is one of my favorite event pictures of me. I'm actually helping rib pressing that we're getting ready to fly, and I got to learn how to use a pickle that day, which is actually a device that runs the motors to raise the trusses up to the ceiling. And yes, I was being supervised by professional riggers. Let's just put that caveat out there first, but it was really a lot of fun. I was learning something different. But I have done more than 30 years. I can't even believe it's been that long. In youth and now children's ministry. And I've been a volunteer, I've been paid staff, and currently I am in a small church where I am coordinating our children's church and working with kids who are ages 4 to 8. And it has been an absolute delight. Did not expect that to be the case, but it really truly has been. I have been doing events for all of my adult life, basically, and have done events ranging from 10 to my largest one was just right at 43,000, and that was a EDM music festival. If you are familiar with EDM, and I have been the event director. I've marketed events. I have staffed events. I've emptied the trash at events. I have cleaned the bathroom at events. So I've covered all of the various aspects. And then, as Jenny mentioned, I wrote my master's thesis on hospitality and how, in a world where we often don't walk into each other's homes, how do we embody God's welcome? And I think that that's such a key part of who we are in ministry, is that we are called to welcome people in Jesus' name. And how do we do that? So that's kind of my background. And then why do we still do events in youth ministry? First of all, it is a great place to build relationships. Getting out an event, if you've done a retreat or a missions trip, you end up being around somebody new that you may not know as well, and you can start creating new connections and new relationships in a world where I'm starting to do some research on loneliness, because there are just more and more articles coming out about the epidemic of loneliness in the wake of the pandemic. And so this being able to help people create relationships that are face-to-face and personally connected, creating spaces where that can happen is so important. The second thing is creating memories. Those are the things that we carry with us. I mean, I personally can think about, being in high school and being at Camp Egan and hiking up to the cross. And it was a dirt path when I was in high school. And when I went back as a youth leader about 4 years after graduation, and they had blacktop that path, I'm like, these kids are getting spoiled. They don't have to climb through the dirt to get up to the cross. This is not fair. But I have great memories of those kinds of things. And so how do we, create those memories? Another key thing I think in youth ministry is they can offer a rite of passage. More and more, we don't see those rites of passage like we used to. Even, a big one was 16 and getting your driver's license. In a lot of areas of the country, kids are waiting till 18 if they drive at all. And so creating things that help them mark that road to adulthood and to maturity is super helpful. And the church is really a place where we can offer that. whether it's confirmation, however that might look, or we did an 8th grade retreat and it was our last event. We got home on Saturday night, and Sunday when they went to church, they were with the high school group. They were welcomed and moved up to freshmen. So those kinds of rites of passage. And then the last thing, I think, where we can really, events are unique to youth ministry in that they can create safe uncomfortability, whether it's a missions trips or a ropes course type experience. Places where people are a little bit uncomfortable but are allowed to do it safely. These are things that can help them have big growth jumps, both spiritually as well as emotionally, maturity, all different aspects. But those are some of those things that we can really help offer to youth and participants through doing events.
Yeah. Mindy, that number 4, we used to have a saying in youth ministry about being a safe place to ask dangerous questions.
Absolutely.
So that they knew that they wouldn't be mocked or bullied, but that they could ask those high-risk questions. So, it's what you said is really important. That safe uncomfortability.
Yeah, it's so key. It's something we all need to grow. We need that safe space to ask the hard questions, to be challenged, and allowed to step up and grow. Yeah, so absolutely. Okay, so let's take a look at pre-event. This is where the majority of things happen. When you show up to an event, even going into a concert, you may not think about all of the things that happened in order for you to experience the concert. The months of planning, the months of creating CAD designs and set designs and stage designs, figuring out how to pack it up, figuring out how to move it to every place, figuring out how it's going to go up in each arena, because no two arenas are alike. And those are those things that we don't see that happen behind the scenes. And so much of an event happens before the event. So let's start with our foundation for any kind of event we're going to do. It goes back to, if you remember from English, the 5 W's and an H. Why? Why are we going to do this event? As much as I love an event, let me just say, don't do an event just for the sake of doing an event. That is the absolute worst reason to do it. Doing it because we haven't done it in a while, terrible reason. Because without a solid why, it's a whole lot of work without a clear payoff. And so always have a start with a solid why. Then we're going to talk about who's going to come to the event, who's the event for, and then who are we going to staff it with? What kind of volunteers do we need? What kind of service providers might we need? Who do we need to staff the event? Then what kind of event? What is it going to be? Is it going to be a retreat, a missions trip, a festival on the lawn of the church, a dive-in movie? What kind of event is it? When is it going to be? Not only the date, but how long? Then the where will the event be held? What's your venue? What's your location? Do you need a retreat center? Do you need a hotel? Do you need a church swap and use a church across town? All kinds of options for venues, but where are you going to hold it? And then last on the list of basic questions, how will you run the event? Will you need professional service providers like caterers or food trucks? Will you need to bring along some parents who are willing to cook at the retreat center? What are the things? Do you need to rent inflatables? How will you run the event? What's going to happen there? And then comes our timeline. The first thing is that we're going to brainstorm with those 5 W's and an H. The next thing that we're going to do is get it on the schedule. And
Can I have you pause for a sec, Mindy?
yeah,
Talk a little bit about brainstorming. Is that something you do solo? Is it something better done with a team? How do you organize that?
that's a great question. And it really depends on the type of event, I would say, and your team situation. If you are a youth pastor who's got some great adults, um, by all means, get together with them and plan. It's definitely easier to plan with a team and to brainstorm with a team than it is to do it on your own. But if it's a dive-in movie night where, we're going to rent an inflatable movie screen and have kids come and bring a friend, you might not need to have quite a whole team for that. So a little bit of the brainstorming depends on the what and the size, but definitely I would recommend at the very least, finding a good friend who will let you bounce ideas off them. Having that second voice is always helpful, and it's a lot more fun.
Yeah, it almost feels like the bigger the event, the more people you should have brainstorming, but you probably shouldn't do it alone on a small event because you might just miss something.
Exactly. Yeah. It's always 2 brains are typically better than 1. 3 brains are better than 2. Yeah. So I tend to be a little bit to the point of the more the merrier, but that said, there's also a point where there's too many people. So think about it in terms of not just people who are going to sit around and give you ideas or who are going to say yes to your ideas, but who is going to help you think critically and create.
Yep. I was reading a book this summer, The Art of Thinking Clearly, and it's by a fellow, I think he was in the Army, and he said they have what's called a GICAL, a great idea cutoff line. And about 2 weeks before the project, the event, it's like no more brainstorming. Said you can't add any more good ideas because we need to execute. But he said there's never a bad idea cutoff line. So if you get closer and it's like, ooh, this element, you can always pull the plug on the bad idea, which I'm like, that's because I'm somebody who will brainstorm till the very end. So it was really helpful for me.
No, that's a really great point. And with the great idea cutoff line, that is called, this is in my file for next year. Because especially if it's an event you're going to do again, save those good ideas that you get too close. So you think, oh man, this would be great. Well, it will still probably be a great idea in a year or the next time you come around to doing that event. The next thing we're going to do is schedule the event, get it on the calendar. If you are renting a venue, whether it is a movie theater or a campground or a hotel, anytime you're getting into venue rental, the earlier that you can do that, the better. You'll have better choices as well as better budget options in negotiating with those kinds of locations. But once you've got your brainstorm and your schedule, you've got your venue booked and your dates, then it's time to really plan. And this is about making those brainstorms come to life. How are you going to start actually having it all happen? Then the next thing is communicate. That is, I don't know that it's really possible to over communicate. I also know the frustration of going, okay, it's been announced from the pulpit. It's been an email newsletter. It's been a text to parents and guardians. It's been in a group chat. We've posted it on all of our social medias that the deadline is Friday and it's Saturday morning, and you still have that one call of, oh, well, I missed the deadline. Can I still come? There's always going to be that one person, but the more you communicate, the less likely you'll have two.
I also say that's probably going to be a pastor's kid. Just saying, my experience.
It often is. or it's that one of, well, the rules apply to me, really? Since when? Yeah, it's always that.
Mindy, how do you know when you're communicating well, and how do you know when you're not communicating well?
Oh, that's a really good question. I think I know in local church experience, I think I know I've communicated well when I'm standing with two parents and one of them is like, well, when's this? I don't think I got anything. And the other parent's going, well, I got this, 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 and this. Yeah. That's always the ideal that, okay, yes, I have communicated well. I actually, when I was with Youth Specialties, we used to mail brochures, and they were big brochures, and we mailed lots of them. And I knew we had communicated particularly well to one congregation who brought me a brown paper grocery sack that had about 85 brochures that we had sent their church to different people. It's like, okay, you guys got the point. Yep, sorry about that. So, yeah.
That's fantastic.
Yeah.
I love that. That's great.
It's really when you start getting the comments of, okay, I get it, I've heard it, that's when you probably know that you have finally gotten through. But like I said, there is always going to be that one. If you are having multiple people come up and ask you about the event that's coming up, then you have not communicated enough. That would be probably the rule of thumb. Then we're going to get to our event. And once we hit event time, it's just about executing. It's just live through the plan, do it. And then finally, once we've gotten through the event, we want to make sure that we conclude it. We wrap up all the loose details, and then we celebrate. All too often, I think, especially in ministry life, we finish one thing and we're on to the next thing, and we don't take that moment to pause and celebrate.
One of my favorite sayings is Madeleine L'Engle, the author, who says, the party's not over till the stories are told. And I think that's so important. And it's something we so easily forget in youth ministry, because we do move on to the next time. And it's like, no, we got to pause to do that celebration and storytelling.
Okay, I'm writing that down, Jenny. Yeah. She's also such a great author. I love her.
Oh my goodness, yeah.
Okay, so budgeting. This is, an absolute essential. There's typically 3 ways to budget for an event. The first one, that is the least expensive for the participants, is simply the organization is fully funding the event and covers all the costs. That's not, typical for a large event, but certainly for things like a dive-in movie night, the church is providing the snacks. We're providing the movie. All you have to do is show up. And I don't know why I'm stuck on a dive-in movie as my example event tonight, but apparently this is something I'd like to do in the back of my brain. It's still pool weather here in Oklahoma. We were at 90 degrees today. So anyway, participants fully fund the event. This is where the total cost of the event is just divided among the anticipated number of participants. And so it's kind of based on that. Most of the time for large events, if there's some organizational budget for the event, and then the participants pay the rest. With all 3 of these models, you have to come up with all of your costs for the event first. That is everything from, if you're using a retreat center, room and board and meals, if you're bringing in extra snacks, how much are you going to spend on that? If you're doing crafts, how much do you need for craft supplies? How much will t-shirt orders cost? You have to, if it's, a retreat that's out of town, are people going to carpool to the event, or are you going to transport all the kids to the event? And if so, how are you going to pay for that? Even if you're using the church vans, do you need to budget for gas for the vans? All of those costs have to be estimated and come up with before you can really truly put together a budget. Um, you know, the church tends to be, there's always going to be their finance person who gets a little antsy around events because of cost. And so, demonstrating that you can anticipate and properly estimate all the costs and then come up with a plan to actually cover everything and meet your budget and stay on budget. That's one of those things in youth ministry that will earn you lots of trust with your church leadership. And it's just good stewardship. So,
Mindy, I have a
yeah.
question for you. Do you have like a standard budgeting tool that you always use, like an Excel spreadsheet that's already made, or do you start from scratch every time?
I'm actually going to steal from Youth Ministry Architects. They have a event planning template that is really good, and it has a budgeting worksheet in it. And Jenny, I think, has that link and is going to post that for everyone. But that one is, yes. And there's basically 6 areas. I could do a separate slide on this next time. Let me see if I can think them all. Your venue costs, whether that's like a room and board or, just a rental fee, food costs, rental costs. Are you having to rent? We did an event at a camp where the band we brought in, we needed to bring in a generator. So what kind of, things like that. So rental costs, renting a generator, honorariums, and booking fees. If you are going to bring in a speaker or a worship artist, what are their fees? Also, really important to pay attention to in the budgeting process. Does their fee include their travel? Are you paying that directly? Are you going to get invoiced for that? How their travel and meals and all are going to be covered as well. And then what are any of your supply costs, whether it's crafts, activities, game supplies, even things like office supplies that you'll need to bring, with you, covering all of those kinds of costs as well. Those are kind of the key areas. The next thing in pre-event is, how do we design the event? This is how we're going to spend our time at the event. What are the outcomes? It is perfectly fine to do an event where the outcome is the kids played together and had fun and made a new friend. That's completely fine for an outcome. That's going to be a really low planning probably activity, like a Nerf Wars, that kind of event. But what are you going to put into it? So what's the content? What are they going to hear or learn? What is the big idea? What are they going to take away? So what are they going to hear to get them to that point? What is the content? What activities? How is their time going to be used? Are you going to have small groups? Are you going to have games? Are you going to have big worship sessions? Are there going to be discussion groups? Is there going to be a Bible study? What are those activities that you're going to do? And then what's the experience? And I think a lot of times this one gets a little lost in the shuffle. And when we talk about what the experience is for participants and even for the staff, how do we design that so that we are engaging all 5 senses, and then your heart, your soul, your body, and your mind? How are you bringing your whole self into that, and how will that experience? And one of the things I would encourage is, when you've got your event designed and you've got your rundown and you're getting ready to start executing on it, sit there as a team and walk through your event. What do you want people to experience when they arrive and check in? What are they going to experience before the first activity? What are they going to experience during the first activity? What sign markers are needed that help them get from one place to another? You know, all of those kinds of things matter into what somebody is able to actually take away with. When I worked for youth specialties, you know, one of the things that our team leader, event company president Tick Long used to say was, we're doing events for event people. Youth ministry people are event people. So if we aren't doing it well, then they're going to be uncomfortable and they're going to be looking around trying to fix it. So we have to do this well. It's not an option otherwise, so that people can relax and truly have a space to meet God. And I think that's true when we're designing events for students. You know, are we doing everything we can in our event design and execution that kids feel safe and are able to hear from God, whatever that may look like? But how do we do that? And so that's where that experience comes in. Honestly, I could go a whole session just on event design because it's really a big piece, but this is kind of the nuts and bolts of it. And I probably need to speed up just a smidge. Communication. So again, Matt, I'm glad you asked that question. You know, you have multiple audiences that you need to communicate to. The key is then to figure out what information they need and when they need it. So your leadership, keep them in the loop from start to finish. They don't need to know nuts and bolts, but they need to know what's going on. And if you don't have PKs, still, if you're sending things to parents, copy your senior pastor or your executive pastor, whoever that might be, on all your communications to your students' grown-ups, because that will help them know that you actually are doing the communication piece. And it also helps them answer questions because they'll get asked too. You know, volunteers and staff for the event, make sure that you've got clear expectations for them. You've got event details for them when you recruit them. And then again, keep them in the loop on all the communications. Parents and guardians, they're going to need details. They need to know what the registration process and times are. They need to know, you know, what kind of confirmation am I going to get when I know my kid is registered? What are the event expectations? What's the timeline? When does the event end? When do I need to pick up my kids? Your students or your participants, they need to know what to expect during the event. They need to know what to bring, and just as importantly, what not to bring. One of the things on my what not to bring list, Axe body spray, especially if we're going to be stuck on a bus with them. Just real.
Oh, preach.
Okay. But, you know, all of those kinds of things, what to bring, what not to bring.
We just did a huge middle school event. So we had about 400. And I remember the second night is a sleepover. So it's a three-day event. And that second night when I opened the door to the sanctuary, all the students were in there. It was like, oh, wow. Yeah.
Yeah. It's real problems. Yes.
It's a sign of life.
It's that toss up of which is worse, the axe or the body odor. It's
a split.
Yeah, it's a tough call. Okay, packing list. These aren't necessarily things you may think about to bring. These are the things that they truly are my don't leave home without them. Even if I'm just doing an event in town, and honestly, I take this stuff in my car when I do an event at my church. My church is half a mile from my home. Doesn't matter. This stuff is always in my car because they will save you in unexpected ways. Collapsible crates. These are fantastic. You pop them open, you fill them with supplies for the area, you put the label on them, and then when they use up the supplies, they collapse and they come flat to go home. So it takes up a lot less space on the way home. They're super functional. You can repurpose them. They are super easy to store between events. So collapsible crates. Drawstring bags. These bags, there's so many options with them. From giving your small group leaders the supplies they need for their small group, to that kid who packed in his, backpack and the zipper broke. He now has a drawstring bag. They come in handy for so many things. But divvying up snacks for hikes, whatever you need to distribute supplies in, drawstring bags are super handy. IKEA bags. Okay, I put the picture on here because those specific blue bags, they are sturdy enough that you can put a small junior hire in them and carry them. They are that durable, but they come with the ability that, again, they fold flat, so easy to pack, but they will hold a ton of stuff. If you do any sort of event where the supplies might get dirty or muddy, you can puncture a few holes in those and then just run water through them, let that bags dry out, dirt runs out the bottom. They're just super functional. Carrying bulky items, carrying heavy items, all of those things. Anything wet, dirty that you end up with, it's a good way to get it home. So IKEA bags are a must. They actually live in my car all the time. First aid kit, clearly. Oh, yeah, Jenny, the ones with the zippers, yeah, those are amazing. I like the ones with zippers too. Yeah, but first aid kit, definitely must have. Toiletries. There is always going to be, even that grown-up who's forgotten their deodorant or toothbrush. Also in the toiletries box, especially if you are working with junior high girls, you need to keep an assortment of sizes of tampons and pads, because it will happen that either there will be a first period or a surprise period and girls need supplies with that. The toiletries kit, I also pack brown lunch bags, because then they don't have to carry around their item if they don't have pockets. They can put them in their little brown lunch sack, and they have a discreet way to carry things around if they need to. I just noticed the USB car jump starter. Matt, those are amazing. I love.
Yeah, that's become my go-to gift for youth pastors now when we plan events together. They're like $100 to get the one that'll jumpstart like a giant diesel of a truck.
Yeah, like the Halo.
Oh, they're just fantastic.
Yeah,
and they save me so often, because you always have that one car that just won't start.
Oh yeah. Well, not only that, power outages. You can still charge your phone, at least have communication. I love those little Halos, and they come in cute colors, which is a total bonus because, like, I like the rose gold. But yes, totally, those are amazing. Tape. You need 4 kinds of tape in your toolkit. You need gaff tape. This is the stuff that will stick down wires and sound equipment, but will not stick to it. So gaff tape, duct tape. I have a friend who, she and I literally repaired cabin bunks with wing nuts, bolts, and duct tape to have enough beds for kids to sleep in one year. Painter's tape. There's so many places that say you can't hang things on the walls, but they will let you with painter's tape, the blue painter's tape. And then Scotch tape, because you just need it. Sharpies. How do we live without them anyway? Oversized Post-it notes. We got to a camp one year, and they had been doing some remodeling, had not put up the men's and women's room bathroom signs yet. Boom, oversized Post-it note and a Sharpie, little painter's tape, instant bathroom marker signs. Binder clips. Binder clips are amazing. You can close your snack bags. You can use them to hang things up to dry. You can group things. Binder clips are super handy. Same thing with zip ties. I've actually made a laundry line out of zip ties before. You can loop your zip tie through your binder clip and have a way to hang things on the end of the bunk. You get just one of those super handy items to have around. Also, you can zip tie your IKEA bags together and use them as slides down the hill. Not that we've ever done that for an event. Hint, hint. Okay. Getting to the event itself. Once you make it there, there's two things to focus on. One is your schedule. You've got to have a running schedule, and you're going to need a participant schedule. This is where people are supposed to be when, and that's it. They don't need other details. They need to know breakfast is at 8 a.m. and it's in the mess hall. They need to know that small groups start at 9 a.m. and they start in this room. That's the information that participants need. Your production schedule, they need to know the rundown for whatever session they're running and all of the tech pieces. And then this is a sample of a master schedule. What is the time going to be? And I just did a screenshot of this. I have a template. I would be happy to send this to you. Or Jenny, I can get you the link to share. But you always want to have your start time, your end time, what it is, where it is, who's in charge, any tasks that are associated with that, what supplies are needed, and any notes. And this is your master schedule, and this is who your leaders need. It will help them know what's needed where, all of those things. And then coupled with this is you need your list of lists. And your schedule is obviously the top, but then you need your supplies. When you are getting to your actual time for an event, you want your supply lists, and you want to be able to break them down by your activity and area. And with that, each area, assign it a color, especially if you're doing a large event. So if you've got recreation, that's all blue. Worship supplies, that's all purple. Small group supplies, those are red. And the reason you add that big color on the label is because at a glance, you know where things are going. And when you color coordinate that, it's just that visual cue to make it so much easier on everybody who's helping, because they learn that as well. So you've got your supplies lists. You need your participant lists. If you are doing, small groups and an overnight event, you need to know who's in what small group. You need to know where they're sleeping. You need to know how they're getting there, which bus or van they're coming on. So you need lists of all of those things. Releases, you need obviously the medical release, any special permissions on the activities, and the emergency contact info for each participant. That goes for your adult participants. I have actually had a situation where I had a camp counselor get really ill, and we needed to have an emergency contact for them. So make sure you have that. I would also add, if you don't already, ask the question, does this person have any sleep disorders? We had an issue one year where we had a kid who was a sleepwalker. No one told us, and this is how the question got added to the form, because we didn't know he was a sleepwalker. We let him sleep on a top bunk, and in the middle of the night, he walked off the end of the bunk. It's also really helpful to know that ahead of time for sleep disorders, if you have somebody who's got sleep apnea and is going to need to make sure there is an outlet near their bunk for their CPAP machine.
That's so good. I actually had a student who was a sleepwalker, and the only way her parents would let her go on an event is if we tied a rope around her ankle to her best friend's ankle. And the amount of times that best friend was being dragged down a hallway was crazy.
Oh my gosh.
Woke her up.
I've never, yeah. That might be the craziest sleepwalking story I've heard. That's far worse than the walking off the top bunk.
Yeah, never on a second story, never with a balcony, always on a ground floor. She was fantastic. She knew she did it. There's nothing she could do about it.
Yeah, that's one of those things that, yeah, when kids have that, it's like adults with sleep apnea. All you can do is use that CPAP or use that safety device. Wow, Matt, that's crazy. Okay. And then the last thing is emergencies. Make sure you have your emergency plan. Especially if you're in an area of the country where you deal with inclement weather, wildfires, obviously your venue should have a plan for that, but you should know that plan, especially if there's going to be any risk during your event. You should communicate that clearly to your leaders. So you want to have that list and plans. The other thing that you want to have with that is making sure that you've got those participant lists with that, so you know that you get everyone out safely. If that's ever a thing, you want to be able to know that.
Yeah.
And then the last thing that I would say with your emergency plans is you need to have your hit by a bus file. And this is, it sounds terrible. I actually stole that term from the West Wing, but this is, if you have all of these things just on your laptop and you as the event leader get injured or hurt, people can't run the event without you at that point, and you may not be able to help them. And so you want the event to be able to go on without you. And so you need the hit by a bus file. And this is where you've got a printed copy of everything. I put everything on a flash drive now that I can hand to somebody, and it's not password protected, but they have a digital copy of everything as well. So you want to make sure that you've got those contingency plans in place.
Mindy, I would also add with the emergency stuff, something we do now is we go in the last planning session, before the event, we'll take about 10 minutes and go through the master schedule with the big pieces and go, okay, what could happen? And if that does, what are we going to do? And so just running through scenarios, I hate to say it, but we had to talk through, what if we have an active shooter? What's our protocol?
Yeah.
And what's our communication? Who's the point person? And we set a point where if there's a major crisis like that, here's where the key leaders, this is where we're going to meet. This is going to be the spokesperson. And we ran it through. So that way, God forbid, if it did happen, we have that muscle memory. And it's like, okay, there's a plan in place here.
No, that's exactly right. I mean, unfortunately, we live in this world where you do have to have plans for an active shooter. If you are doing any indoor event, you need to have an evacuation plan as part of that. You need to have a shelter in place plan as part of that. I'm working with an arena here that seats 19,000 people. And that's part of the documentation and training is, here's where you shelter in place. Here's where you evacuate. These are the routes. This is how this works. And, it's just a reality, prayerfully nothing will happen. But if you, like Jenny said, you walk through it, you talk through it, and then if something does happen, you've got that contingency plan in place. Okay. These are just a few little things I would throw in to make sure that you actually are able as an event leader to enjoy it. One thing is to recruit 1 or 2 extra people that can just be floaters. When you're thinking about these folks, ask people who are positive, not Pollyanna, but positive. They're going to be like, yes, let's go do this. And people who are just willing to pitch in and do whatever, those folks can save your life during one of these events. And just having that little bit of extra hands is super helpful. Under schedule. And what I mean by this is it's so easy to go, we want to do all these things, but we don't want to come home, especially if you're doing like a retreat with kids or a camp with kids. They're going to go home tired enough from just having a normal type schedule. So don't overpack the schedule. Make sure you program in a little bit of downtime for both leaders and participants. Make sure that that's there. And also with that idea of downtime is if you are doing an event on a place like, say, a college campus or a large campground, make sure that you're leaving in enough transition time so that people don't have to run from one thing to the next. Because especially if you're doing an event for middle schoolers, they will actually run from one thing to the next, and then they will collapse and be cranky. So yeah, under schedule. Sleep. It is so easy, and I have done it to myself where I have gone into an event tired, and that is absolutely the worst. So really try to do your best to manage your own schedule and those days leading up to it, that you can get some good sleep before you get there, and then try to, resist the temptation to stay up late talking with folks or working on things that maybe somebody else could do, and get sleep during the event. And then the last one on this is make sure you breathe. Events, stealing this from Ferris Bueller, events move pretty fast. If you don't stop, look around once in a while, you could miss it. It is so easy when we run an event to get to the end and look back and go, what even happened? I missed it. So take those moments to go be present. Anything on your task list can wait the 60 seconds it will take you to stop in a room where kids are worshiping and soak that in for a moment. Anything you're going to do can wait, 60 seconds as you watch two people make a connection and have this moment of realizing they have more in common than they would have thought, and start the seeds of friendship. So take that moment to really breathe in and enjoy the event that you've been planning. And then finally, we're cutting close. Post-event. Once you get done and get home, to wrap it up. Whoops, one too many there. Let's finish strong. If this is going to be something that you want to repeat, let's set you up for success. Let's start by thanking leaders, thanking your vendors, thanking participants. Thank you, thank you, thank you. That matters. And so often when we get back from an event, we are tired and do not do that as well as we could. I try to remember to buy my post-it notes, or my my thank you notes before I go. And that way I'm more ready to write them when I come home. Make sure that you evaluate the event. Ask the participants, whether they were students or leaders, even your vendors, do a post-event evaluation, get feedback, because that's only going to help you know what works, what didn't, what to do again, all of those kinds of things. Then you want to document that. Keep records of what worked and what didn't for future reference. If you created forms, other materials that you created, create like a historical record, and that you can use them again, reference them again, and be able to use them for the future. And then the last thing is report. Make sure your congregation, here's the highlights of the trip or the event. Let them help celebrate with you. Make sure your leadership knows what went well. Also, if there is something that went wrong, you need to be the first one to report that to your leadership. Don't let them hear that secondhand. You wanted to hear it from you, even if you need to call your pastor during the event. Be the one to give the bad news first. It will always go better for you in the long run.
Mindy, I would add to this one too, that it would be great if it's a major, like a retreat or something, if the church that following Sunday could give the youth ministry like 15 minutes to just tell some stories. And the buy-in from the rest of the congregation and the support is incredible. When they're like, oh, this is what we've been praying for. And it makes it a whole church event if they can hear the stories.
Yeah.
Especially the larger ones, like the larger events, a missions trip, Unite that's coming up. Our church printer, it was 7 cents to print an image in color on an 11 by 17 sheet. And so then I did the math and was like, well, 10 of them is like 70 cents, 100 is $7. Let's spend $70 and print 1,000 pictures in color from our event. And then let's wallpaper the entire sanctuary so that when people walked in, all they saw was images from this event. And then when it was over, we said to all the students, take whatever you want. And almost all of them got taken down and put up in their rooms. So I didn't have to do any of the cleanup, and everybody could see the images everywhere.
Brilliant.
That is really brilliant. Yeah, that's a fantastic idea. And again, that gets into the last piece of this is celebrate. It's too easy to go right, like we said earlier, to go on to the next thing. And that is a way to, Matt, that's a fabulous idea because it really invites the whole congregation into celebrating what's just happened. It also will build anticipation for future. So there we go. I think I have done the flyby of all of this.
This was great, Mindy. Thank you.
Oh, you are so welcome. Yeah, if there's any questions anybody has, I am happy to try and answer those. If somebody wants to reach out with a question later, Jenny has my contact info, and I'm happy to have her share that. Have you connect us.
Great. I do have one. I've noticed on a couple of youth ministry chat boards I'm on, just coming out of COVID, that people will plan events and no kids will show up. And so it's this kind of, what is it? Not the fear of missing out, but it's a fear of losing options. And so I don't want to RSVP in case something else. Are you picking up, and how would you advise someone to deal with that?
Yeah, that is definitely it feels like a newer thing. And people are waiting longer to commit. I think we're all still figuring out how to navigate that one a bit. Yeah. I think on the options, one thing would be to engage some student leaders early on in the planning. Because if you have some student leaders who've bought into the event and are excited about the event, then they're going to be able to pull along others with them.
That's good.
I think that's going to be probably something that happens. I think the other thing is that we have to rebuild trust at events. And I'm seeing this in a variety of places. And so that rebuilding trusts looks like it's a safe space for me to be, in that, whether it's there are adequate hand sanitizer stations still, or that, there is visual security. It ranges a little bit on the type of event as to what that visual of safety needs to be, but there's somehow it's communicated that this will be a safe space. I think that's it. And then I think also, I don't know an elegant way to say this, but a lot of times it seems to be I don't know if it's a fear or a lack of knowledge on young people's parts, on children's parts, of how to have human to human interaction. And this is something I saw really coming out of COVID, working with young kids at my church when we restarted our children's church program. We had 3-year-olds and 4-year-olds coming in who they had never been around anybody but mom and dad, because they didn't get a normal preschool experience. They didn't get a pre-K experience. And we would see with their older siblings, there was reluctance, because who are these strangers? And we don't know how to be around other people than our family. And while that's, lessened over the last 18 months or so, there is still a thing of people don't know how to be present with each other. we end up hiding behind our phones and our screens because this is now how we're used to communicating is through screens and not through real life.
Yep. Along with that, we also have found that we need to provide sensory spaces for our louder events.
Yeah.
It was not something we did in the early days. So I'm acutely aware of the time, and we've hit the top of the hour. So
yeah, it was really quick.
I know, it's such good information. Thank you for those who are here live. And, for those of you who are watching the recording, please let us know other ideas you have for webinars. And if there's anything mentioned that you need to follow up, just reach out to me or to Matt and we can follow up with you. But Mindy, thank you so much.
Oh, no. Thank you all for inviting me. I have so enjoyed doing this. It was really fun. It's really fun to actually sit there and go through, wow, what is it I actually do? And then back on an outline.
Well, I'm excited to make a new friend. Yeah,
Me
and I hope
too.
that this is not the end of us seeing you, but only the beginning.
Yes, I hope so. I would love that.
Good.
Awesome. Matt, Jenny, everyone, thank you.
Thanks
Thanks.
for being here.
Okay,
Thanks all. Take care.
bye.